So good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming to our presentation today. Today we will be having Florida Tech third-year student Zackery Wihela talking about open educational resources. So without further ado, I will go ahead and turn it over.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out. As Mr. Wellman said, I am a third-year physics student here at FIT, and jumping right into it, open educational resources are any kind of educational resource under an open license, as the name implies. So that's just textbooks, slides, video lectures, lecture notes, homework assignment, you name it, underneath any variant of open license that allows you to retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute the material. Most commonly, OERs are under some form of Creative Commons license. So the way CC licenses work is that there's a variety of tags, and by mixing and matching tags, you create different licenses. For OERs specifically, the tags you'll most commonly see are attribution, which just means you have to give credit to what you found the material as. Share alike, which means that if you publish a modification to it, it has to be under the same license you get it under. No derivatives, which OERs tend not to be under at all, but that just means you can't modify it if you do see one. And non-commercial, which means you cannot make a profit off of the materials. But as a nonprofit, FIT is perfectly fine to use non-commercial licenses. So for teaching here, that's not actually an issue. But so that's what OERs are and why they're good. So from a student perspective, the average US undergrad spends $1,226 per academic year on textbooks. 25% of all US undergrads have reported to work extra hours, and 11% have skipped meals in order to pay for their textbooks. I don't think I need to argue why skipping meals is a bad thing. But there's also costs that come with working extra hours. So there's obviously scheduling constraints. Every hour spent working is an hour not spent studying, not spent reading the textbook. But it's also an hour not spent taking breaks, not spent relaxing. And college is stressful, students are under a lot of pressure, and jobs don't help at all. You can't really calm down, take a break while on the job. Studies have shown that working at all, but especially working over 20 hours, leads to a statistical decrease in GPA for all US undergrads. But then there's also the teaching perspective. OERs are great for students, great for student wallets, but also from a teaching perspective, using OERs can increase your flexibility. Most of the classes I'm in, and most of the classes I've taken, are very modular in that it goes from one topic to the next, most obviously in the form of chapters. Whereas by using OERs, you are able to take the best chapters and the best topics from multiple different books at no cost to students and no cost to yourself, and use them in one lesson. If you really like chapter A from this book and chapter B from this book, you can use both of them. Just mix and match in that way. That also lets you, under the open license, you're able to modify most of these materials. And by doing that, if you want to adjust the wording or put in better visuals, or if you find a better way of explaining the material, you can just substitute that in yourself. And then for upgradability, if you find a better way of explaining under a different book, you can use that, or you can completely just substitute out your slides if you find a different set better, and there's things like that. It also future-proofs your class from, so you no longer have to change textbooks if Pearson decides to put out a new book for your subject. There's also benefits in the actual classroom. One of the more common excuses for not doing work is not having textbook, not having the materials. With an OER, you can just put the materials on campus, or you can link students to it. And as long as they have access to the internet, which they do through Evans Library, there's no excuse to not have the materials. Students can also print PDF copies for 10 cents a page here on campus, or if they have a printer at home. So that there's those different options. And I've already touched on it, but you can have multiple explanations. You can use pages even within a chapter from multiple books on the same subject. And that just allows you to double down. If you find half the students find this way of teaching best and the other half find this way, you can use both of them in your class. And this might sound too good to be true. These materials are free, and I'm saying they have a lot of different benefits to actually teaching. And the statistics back that up. There was a meta study that was done involving over 100,000 US undergrads, and they found that between commercial and open books on the same subject with the same professor, there's statistically identical learning performances. And grades stay the same, student ratings of understanding stay the same, so that's self-surveying. And there were tests and quizzes and homework assignments rated roughly the same. And so any difference was well within margin of error. And also, that same meta study found that students were 29% less likely to drop the class if it was an open book over a commercial book. And that likely ties into the financial aspects of it. And so by switching to OERs, students perform identical and are more likely to actually stay in the class. As for actual quality differences between OERs and commercial books, they're basically the same. Students and professors have been surveyed on it, and what tends to be true is open materials have better wording, better explanations, are written better at the cost of the graphics aren't quite as good. But that's one of those small trade-offs, and considering all the other benefits, I feel that would be worth it for most classes. I would like to invite Dr. Aberdein to come up and talk about his experience.
Thanks a lot. So yeah, I have some experience with teaching logic in particular. So I brought some visual aids. So I used to teach from this book, Essentials of Logic by Coakley, Cohen and Blage, that's Blage, which you can see my somewhat tattered copy. I used this for a good many years, but I still use exercises from it. As Zackery just mentioned, the visuals are better, the pictures are prettier. But having said that, other aspects, I think it was the full retail on this is now like $100. And what I realized about half a dozen years ago, this is not a particularly recent book, it's a second edition, but it came out over 10 years ago. My copy is quite nice and has half color in it. The copies that were being sold to the students were all black and white, basically reproduced versions of these findings that were cracking up, because they were basically just doing it by print on demand because they'd run out of their original edition. So they weren't even getting a particularly good quality product. Fortunately, for logic, it's a fairly stable discipline. At least introductory logic hasn't changed very much in 50 years. Some aspects of it haven't changed very much in 2,000 years. So there are many textbooks out there. Some of them are very pricey. Some of them are quite affordable. Certainly, I used to tell students that they would be fine getting an earlier edition, so they could save money that way. The earlier editions didn't really differ that much. In some other disciplines, I'm sure that's not true, but in logic, it's really just superficial differences. But the price difference was significant. So, I mean, I didn't attempt to do any kind of statistical study whether my student results improved when I switched to an open text. I suspect the effect would be minimized by the fact that I was actually working with, as I say, there were other options available for them if they really wanted to nickel and dime it. They could get like a second-hand copy of an earlier edition. I mean, this is the second edition, but it's the second edition of a redaction of an older book that is now in like its 17th edition. So there are run and there are other books. Its materials the same. Fortuitously, there is a project. So if you look horrible, but this is what I now use, my printed out version. But you don't have to print it out. And there is a project called openlogicproject.org, which is, I think, seems to be organized out of Canada. This is a group of various different people who have been working on putting together a modular logic textbook, which does a pretty good job. Some respects in which the exercises in the old book were maybe a bit better, but in some other areas, the exercises in the new book are better. And also, I mean, it does actually have a fair amount of additional support. There is a website which you can use for formal proofs, so to check when you're working, which some commercial textbooks do this as well, but then often they're quite tricky to access because it's commercial, they're trying to keep out the interlopers who didn't pay for the textbook, which means that that's an extra friction for the students trying to access this thing. They have to go in through Canvas or through some complicated path. This thing's just up on the open web, so I can just give people the URL. They can play around with it and check their working on exercises. They don't have to come to me and say, it doesn't tell them the answers, but if they enter the answer, it tells them whether it's right. So that's a helpful tool, and that's really available, and it's integrated with this text. It's exactly the same proof system. So there's no concern there. It's a bit. So at least for that subject, this has been a helpful experience for me, and I think a helpful experience for my students. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Right. So what Dr. Aberdein did is convert what I decided to call a low difficulty conversion class. So I've come up with 3 different broad categories of classes. Categorizing anything is not perfect. There's always mix and matching, but at least as far as low difficulty classes are concerned, these are classes with small class sizes. There's not very many sections on them typically, and professors have a high amount of individual control. Because of the open nature of these classes, or because of the small class sizes, manual grading of assignments, quizzes, tests are viable and often even necessary. And so for these classes, it's usually as simple as just choosing a good OER you like switching out the syllabus to reflect that. And if you use pre-made slides, it's just switching which slides you use. There's nothing super complex about any of this, and it's a fairly simple experience overall. Now I would like to invite Dr. Peverati to come up and talk about his experiences.
Hey, thank you. Yeah. My name is Dr. Peverati. I'm a professor in the chemistry department, so slightly different than what we heard before. I teach mostly physical chemistry. My background is in physical chemistry. It's really at the border between chemistry and physics. It's kind of a hybrid of the two. And the other classes I teach is usually general chemistry, which is a large freshman class. So that probably goes in your next slide, where we will have more large class sizes. So this is not the kind of a class that we're talking here. But my physical chemistry class is very much suited to open educational resources. And I realized that as soon as I was hired 6 years ago, we were using, the previous teacher were using the classic Pearson's textbook, using the Mastering Chemistry, which is the paid version paid website that Pearson had to do exercises. The student needs an access code to it. And when I started teaching that class, I kept it as regular. I mean, it was my first class that I was teaching, so I didn't change anything. And the single most asked question by student was, how do I get access to this? Why is it so expensive? can I do anything about it? Can you do anything about it? The answer at that time was no. Then as time passed, what was it, a couple of years ago, I think, the library put up an announcement that they were seeking, they had a small grant to give out to switch one class to open educational resources. Applied, and I was lucky enough to get selected. And my proposal was basically to, I've done a fairly extensive search of all the available, OER resources on physical chemistry. There were a few, not that many. I was not lucky enough to have an entire website done by experts on that. So I decided to write my own. Okay, so I at the beginning, I decided to call it the live textbook of physical chemistry. And at the beginning, I sort of took material from different sources, making sure that the copyright was correct, as Zackery was pointing out at the beginning, and patching things that lacked most into this website. And then this thing started to evolve. This is why I called it a live textbook, because this was first year that I was using it. So I decided just to take material from different places and put it in. And then I put my own spin to these materials. Then luckily enough, I'm a computational chemist by training. I work with computers, so I was playing with it a little bit. So I designed this website using, again, all open sources material, all open source resources. I've designed the website, and I put all the stuff on the website. And I've switched my student to this instead of using the Pearson's textbook. And like I said, or like Zackery said, really, this is really tailored for my class. So we do how many, 14 or 15 weeks of classes, and I have how many? 14 chapters. Each chapter is 1 week. Students love it because it's simple. I mean, we're week 3, week 4, week 5. You go to the corresponding chapter, and then each chapter again is basically just the material that the student need to know and study for the exam. It's not overloaded like many of the main textbook, especially in physical chemistry. There's so much that, I had students buying a $200 textbook, 500 pages with so much material that then I use only maybe 10% of it, not much more than that. Well, for this, every time a student asks me, what do I need to study? Well, I said, well, go to the website or go to the textbook. Everything is in there, you need to know. Everything that is not there, you don't need to know. So, like I said, this thing is currently evolving. So it started as, I took a bunch of material from different places and patched it together. And then the next year, I think I started the first year, and then the next year become fully integrated. I designed my own graphics. So I had a little more time, and I designed my own graphics. I designed my own, maybe not here, but probably I'll see the pictures, hopefully. Yeah, I've created my own pictures. Again, it didn't start like that. First year, I took them from Wikipedia, making sure that the copyright was right. And then as times passed, I was getting excited, students were getting excited about it, and I decided to update it with adding my own images to it. The text, of course, was heavily modified to the point that if you take it now, you basically cannot find the original sources anymore. Of course, this is all documented. Attribution is given with the correct license. I was making sure to do that. Yeah, so this is basically my story. And then I moved on. I teach also another class which is called Physical Chemistry 2, slightly more advanced class. And I decided to do the same thing. Same thing for Physical Chemistry 2, PChem 2. So it became just one big textbook divided as we do it here into two little sections, PChem 1 and PChem 2. And as far as students, I've heard only positive about students about this. Like I said before when I teach with Pearson's, the #1 complaint was Mastering Chemistry, this paid website where they do exercising. Now, I did not have the time to prepare my own website where they can do exercises just yet. I'm thinking about it, but I didn't do it just yet. It takes a lot of work, of course, as you may imagine. But what I've done is I've switched to Canvas. So basically, I use Canvas. I've prepared a library of question exercises together with the textbook, and I put it there, and then I select the exercises and send it to them using Canvas. Now, this is convenient. The exercises is not, they're not that many. So, of course, that's probably a drawback, if you want, of this approach. But like I said, this textbook is a live version. So if I have time in the future, I can always add more stuff, add the section where I add the exercises. I mean, I have lots of ideas in mind about how to evolve this thing. And no student complained about exercises anymore. No student complained about websites, Pearson's, of course, no complaints at all. Even today, I had one student say that he loved the textbook in PChem1, and is very happy that he's taking my PChem2 classes right now, and he's happy that I kept using the open educational resources. My teacher's evaluation, what's that worth? I don't know, but they got, after the adoption of the website of the textbook, they gone up substantially. So that might be related. I don't know. Maybe, hopefully. Now, like I said, I also teach general chemistry. I have very little control on that because it's 4, 5, 6 maybe different teachers that teach that class. So I'm only one of the teachers. I'm not the coordinator. But I'm pushing to try to get them adopt a open textbook. For that class, of course, it's going to be very hard to write your own because it's a large text. It's a large class, 200-300 people. It's very hard to do. But I'm pushing because, once again, the #1 complaint for general chemistry is that Pearson's website. And I don't want to bash on Pearson's. I mean, I have no ties with them, but boy, that the website is bad for students, and it costs a lot of money. I mean, they pay I don't know how much to get access to it, and then it works very bad. So they pay.
Pearson costs about $200.
There you go.
It depends a little bit on the program, but like all the calc series and Gen Chem 1 and 2 and Phys 1 and 2 and modern physics, all about $150 to $200.
Yeah, something like that. Now, my next step, if you allow me 1 more minute, yeah, like I said, my next step, which was already planned, was to track students' performance. Now, that I had to put it on the side because we recently, I'm not sure if you heard, I guess you do, we had a pandemic, and then I had to switch to online, and it was very hard to track the performance of the student for online teaching. I mean, my way of tracking the performance will be to use what are called American Chemical Society exams, which are standardized exam provided by the American Chemical Society. They're very much used throughout chemistry. But then again, we couldn't use those online during pandemic because they're heavily protected. So we couldn't use those. So I don't have the data for student success. Just anecdotal data. I mean, my student performance, for what I see, has gone up substantially. Every year I had the first couple of years I taught it with the regular textbook. I mean, it might be just my fault. I was just newly hired, so don't read too much into that. But I had about 10% of students failing the class. The number in the last years has dropped substantially. Now I have probably less than 5% students failing the class. So if that matters, again, I will get more data in the future, and I will do that. But I can only speak positively about it. It is a little bit of work upfront for the professor, but it saves so much headache. It saves so much work down the road that I'm trying to push my general chemistry colleagues to adopt it because it's wonderful. All right. With that said, thanks, Zackery. I'll leave the floor back to you.
Thank you for giving me. Yeah, so what Dr. Peverati is talking about, his P10 class is what I would classify as a medium difficulty conversion class. These have larger class sizes, but there's still only a few sections of them, or one or two, and professors still have that high level of control. Because of the large class sizes, manual grading may not be viable, and when that is the case, you have to do all the same things you would do for a low difficulty class: choose a textbook or choose a collection of them, switch over slides, change the syllabus. Yes. But then to get around the grading issue, you can use different options. There's a lot of them, but I've highlighted two here. There is WebWork, which is an open source grading thing similar to Pearson. It's about the same quality, but it's free. The problem with WebWork is you have to make the assignments custom. You have to do them yourself. But I do know that the math department here has experience with that. And then the other one is WebAssign. It is proprietary. It costs students a small fee in the $20 to $30 range, but it's free for professors. It's significantly cheaper than Pearson, and it comes with a lot of pre-made assignments for most of the lower level, most of the common classes. And so that saves you a lot of work, and it's significantly cheaper for students. Not free, but it's still significantly cheaper. Then the final category is creatively named high difficulty conversion classes. So these are like what Dr. Peverati was talking about at the end with Gen Chem. These are large class sizes with a lot of different professors teaching it. And that means that there's not a lot of control for really anyone. And in these cases, there's really not much you as an individual can do other than just, you can still make use of OERs via recommending additional resources. If you find a book you like, you can recommend your students read it. And if you find explanatory phrases you like from them, you can just use them in your lecture. But actually converting to OERs, there's not much to be done from an individual perspective. If the class coordinator, however, decides to do the conversion, it's actually kind of as simple, and it's actually less work per person, and as medium difficulty classes so if the class coordinator decides to switch over to OERs, all you would have to do is select textbook or select the textbook ranges, set guidelines for how you want the slides to look, how you want lecture notes to be, and from there you would just divide and conquer. So you would split the course up into how many professors you have, each do an equal amount of work, and then at the end of it you have a OER class for 20–25% of the work, and that affects a lot of people, a lot of students. Hence, covering every class, not just high difficulty classes. So another benefit about OERs is that they can, well, it's an opportunity to experiment, and you are able to just try different things from semester to semester or professor to professor to see what works best for you. It's significantly easier to make these small adjustments, or just, if you want, switch out the textbook entirely for one chapter or two. So, and then when it comes to deciding if you're going to switch over, especially for like a high difficulty class, a good time to consider it is when the textbook you currently use goes out of date. And a lot of publishers publish every 3 to 5 years to continually first sale to the new books. And whenever that happens, it can be a good opportunity to explore the alternatives, look into some of the open materials. And since you have to switch books anyways, it's not really any extra work unless if you have to set up an automatic grading, which again, the math department here has some experience with that, and there's different guides, there's a lot of resources to be found for setting up those automatic grading things. as for where to actually find open materials, Evans Library has what I'm calling a meta database for OERs. So it under this link, and it's just, if you search up Evans Library, open educational resources, this page will come up. It's a database full of databases. Each one of these databases contains a lot of open materials. Of particular interest here is the, Zoom is covering it, but it says open textbooks up here, and then there's completed courseware and course material. The open textbooks are exactly what they sound like. It's databases that contain just textbooks, not much else. So if you choose from those, you would have to make your own slides or continue using old ones, and you might have to adjust your lecture notes, but overall, it's open books and there's a lot of options. And to make things easier, you can look under the completed courses options, and those contain just about everything. And a lot of those have entire classes, including the video lectures, but you don't have to print that out. Lecture notes, slides, and the textbooks themselves, as well as a lot of them have assignments already made for you. You would still have to host it if you want self-grading, but you don't have to come up with the questions yourself. So just as a conclusion, and OERs for students are free and accessible. They're easy to get, and the learning performances are exactly identical. There's no statistical difference. And for professors, they allow you to easily upgrade your class, tweak it as things are needed, and they have a relatively simple conversion process of choosing a book you like switching out the syllabus, maybe switching your slides, maybe doing a online grading solution if you need it, and they significantly increase your flexibility in the class by just letting you tweak things along the way, upgrade as you find better explanations, and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I'm Zach, again, third year physics student here, and I had a lot of help along the way from Marcus Vada and Parker Christensen. Unfortunately, neither of them could make it here today, but all three of us are juniors at FIT with our different majors listed below. I'd also like to give a special thanks to Dr. Aberdein and Dr. Peverati for agreeing to speak up here as guests, and another thank you to Mr. Bill Bowman and Ms. Garner for hosting this and putting up with all the scheduling. That's all I have. So I'm opening up for Q&As now if there are any.